you know, for most people who are in the dying process, they're confused, they're in a panic, the fear's there.
But let's look at what is the panic they are in. What are they panicking for? First, and the most important within a lot of hospitals still is not done enough, they are panicking about pain. Mm-hmm. So the first and most important thing is to help them not to have pain. This ideas that when you give too much morphine then they are not conscious in dying is a very old concept of Buddhism, but it's wrong. Even if you are unconscious, even if you have a lot of morphine, that inner part which is disconnecting from your body-mind is not affected by that. I call it the observer. Mm-hmm. That's not affected. So it doesn't matter. So the first thing is to get really away from the pain. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that they really have to see and to understand that this resistance is not towards their personality, it's towards losing the body. And that's like someone who you say, well, you know, your car is not working anymore, now you need a new car. Mm-hmm. They will have 1,000 ideas why it's not possible, money, what do I know? So the thing is that most of people who are getting in panic or resistance of dying is, again, because they have identified with the body, mm-hmm. first, and second, always the same. It always comes back to the same. They are still not ready because they think they haven't fulfilled their life. Now, what I'm saying is, because of that, as earlier you learn to have dying process, which is form of meditation. Every day you go to sleep, you have this tiny little moment where you move from consciousness of falling asleep to a zero factor before you fall asleep. That's the dying process. As earlier you start, Buddhas not constantly to be attached to things, and with being attached we don't talk about having a house or a CD player. We're talking about the idea that my model is the only one, that my idea is the correct one. As less you have this kind of attachment, as easier it is, because then you have an inside sensation of what will happen at the end of your life already every day. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So this dying process, I mean, it has a very grim kind of sense of feeling to talk about that subject, but yet, from talking to you, it seems like, you know, it's actually the living process.
Yes.
So, how could we help people in a day-to-day living process without labeling it dying process? You say to live your life to its fullest. So presumably people are missing out. They're not aware of their qualities. They're not living their life to their qualities.
Okay, but let's first turn it the other way around. Instead of dying process, let's call it differently. Enlightenment.
Right.
It's exactly the same. I don't know what by enlightenment is really going, but it's the, you know, some people say the ego is going, but without the ego, what are you going to do in this world? Mm-hmm. But the dying process is the same like enlightenment. It means you are becoming authentic yourself, independent if someone else likes it or not. To say it differently, you are starting to living in a very specific way. The way is very simple. Whatever someone does, you don't mix up the person with the action. You may be against the action, but you will never be against the person who has done the action. And that is, Krishnamurti called it dying process, the Sufis called it. That's what enlightenment or dying process is. You stop thinking that the form, the personality is the main thing, or the action behind. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, if you want to increase that, you can do that. Enlightenment can be not reached, but you can fall into enlightenment through different kinds of meditation, yoga. I have structured a new form which neurobiologically goes with the brain, called modern meditation. The dying process, that's a process we do in courses where you learn a specific how, like when you really die, to bring the energy upwards. Some people call it the Kundalini. You know, it's always coming to the same. When someone dies, the person who loses the person says the person has died, but there is someone else on the other side who says the person has been born. So it's this constant readiness of seeing things without immediately attaching. I call it creating space. And whenever you create space and then you really come to the dying process, the real actual one, it's inside you. You know it and you can relax totally with it.
So that also implies that in daily life to move away or to deal differently with fear. And I know you teach that fear is a symptom of sadness.
Yes.
And so it needs to be made more familiar to people.
Exactly.
Because they're actually living in a fearful state most of the time.
Yeah. So why are people afraid? People are afraid. There are three fears. There's biological fear. About that we don't talk. If you don't have enough food, if you don't have every day for you to fight for your existence, that's natural. Then there is spiritual fear. We don't talk about that one. This is when you have from one consciousness movement to another one. We're talking about psychological fear. Psychological fear is always based on the level of not being loved. Will I be loved or not? Then you can put it in 1,000 different explanations and situations. But it's, will I be loved or not? Which means on a certain level it's acceptance or not acceptance. I'm always saying, being not accepted, or the concept of not being accepted, means freedom. Because you don't want to accept everybody, that's your freedom. So not acceptance is freedom. So you should stop being afraid of not being accepted. And then from there, if you look what fear is, fear, psychological fear, is rooted in love. Because if you look at it, fear is always the caring for someone or for yourself. So when you say, I'm afraid not to have that, or for this, or for that, and we are not talking pathologically about the spider or whatever, psychological fear as such. It is always, in fact, showing you how much you care for yourself. So instead of fighting the fear, the moment you see that you are caring for it, you are moving to sadness. Because sadness is that you are not afraid that the person doesn't like you, you are sad that the person does not want to be in touch with you. And when you then do not react to that sadness, that's the process of dying, you move naturally into stillness. So yes, I say one of the fundamental things people have to learn and to see is that fear is not an enemy, it is showing you how much energy you have put in loving yourself and others, and once you deal with that, you move on a different direction. And all these people who every day are in fear and dependent of, will someone like me or not like me, will what I do be as appreciated or not, this is a nightmare, this is hell. And freedom in Buddhism, this inner peace, comes only when you understand that fear at the end of the day is rooted in love. But it's this difficult to grasp because you cannot do it intellectually. You have to get on a feeling level with that. And that again, you cannot have real feelings, and that time therapy makes a distinction between fast feelings and slow feelings. Fast feelings are what is happening just in the body. Aggression is 3 minutes, adrenaline, and after 3 minutes you have to bring it all in the mind so that it goes on, otherwise it's gone, because it's the flight or fight reaction. And slow feelings are feelings which are not on the body level. Love is not really happening on the body level. Bliss is not really happening on the body level. It's an atmosphere. And when people start to see that fear is love, it just starts to shift from this controlling emotions that you do over the body. It starts to shift towards the outside, and the body is a carrier and not anymore a controller of what is happening.
Right, right.